I'd like to read And the Thing Is, which I was lucky to have won the Welsh Poetry Award in 2020. If there had been a Brixton in the home counties, or a Cardiff in the valleys, a Toxteth or a Chapeltown, where we could have dropped our Georgie bundles, where my mother could keep her church hat and her accent, where she didn't have to always explain where she came from, where she could have kept her doilies and her Jesus and slipped into familiar ways like others from the sun. If her laughter could have broken on back steps and carried upwards to the telephone wires, loud and raucous like parakeets. If carnival was not something to watch online or remember from 1969, we could have cauterized some of the wounds we acquired whilst migrating. South of the river in 1973, you couldn't get a plant in. You couldn't find an eddo, saltfish or jeera, sweet potato, bird pepper, callaloo. Casrip only come in somebody grip travelling back from home. When the body have to force itself to dumb down your force-ripe self, and your chiffon dress too flighty for the worship. When no hymns bursting, no tambourines reverberating, and the smiles of few over the pew. You are not easily identifiable. The colour of your skin mystifies. Because the thing is, we didn't have no tribe. When you're half in, half out, which half to throw out is the thing. Which half can you reconcile as you watch TV, the boys them get stopped over and over, but nobody don't shove you on the bus, or cross the road, or move house? That is the razor blade of misconception. The shame. You have to beat yourself to belong at the extent of denying half of you, quarter of you, 2 cents of you, 5 shillings of you, from Madeira to the Ivory Coast to Edinburgh. But heard Jesus come with my mother, who thanked him for all he had done, bringing her and her children out of the wilderness. Not understanding was a different kind of wilderness. While letters from home, full of murder and gangster and riots, the Portuguese quarter where she born now a no-go, and even sugar you can't get though you grow up right there next to Canefield, our granddaddy breaking his back for 40 years. We have to be thankful. We have to be thankful. We have to be thankful. So, we swimming in a different world, and I'm not saying it all bad. The people did not massacre us with hate. No dog shit by the front door, though once I got called a white nigger. My mother got called love. Found work amongst those whose hands were the colour of work. Still they say, we never knew people like you grew there. 2 generations later, across a pebbled beach in Kent, broken families are walking out of the sea in wet shoes. Their children and their mobile phones held high above their heads, surrendering their bodies to the Dover Patrol. In their wake, another broken trail, a human chain from places formerly known as home.
You were among the winners of the Welsh International Poetry Competition 2017. and even more recently you won the 2020 Poetry Wales Poetry Competition, judged by Pascal Petit. Your winning poem is, simply put, stunning. You also have other connections with Wales, and Wales is a country known to have inspired poets over centuries. And in fact, as recent as literally last month at the Seren Cardiff Poetry Festival, there was one talk about Wales being a nation of sanctuary for artists and writers. I'm very interested to know about the poem which you have just obviously read, about that poem itself and your feelings towards Wales, if I may please.
Well, picking up on what you said about Wales being a sanctuary, I think that's certainly true, because at the time of my life when we decided to leave Kent and move to Wales, that's just what we were looking for. Our children had grown up and gone off into the world, and my husband had just, his work, he worked at an airport which had closed, so he was not quite ready for retirement, but was like, so, and Wales had always been in my mind as one of these places of beauty, full of myth. I had holidayed there in the past, and I just had a longing. I think it was obviously the landscape was the most important thing for me. The first landscape I saw in this country was the landscape of Wales, the Black Mountains, Snowdonia, and also the Lake District at a later time. And I really missed that connection to the land, because coming from Guyana, Guyana is a country of spectacular waterfalls and interior, which I, living on the coast, never saw in my life. And being a migrant and coming over here at age 17, when I saw this beautiful landscape, it kind of answered a call that I'd never had the chance to explore in my own country. So I think that, with the loss of land and being a migrant, were the ideas behind that. The poem which won the Wales Poetry Award was a poem that had been, or an idea that had been in my mind for a long time, and I didn't really know how to articulate it, because there are a lot of very powerful poems about race, and I didn't really, being mixed race, you don't really know how to kind of frame, or even if there is a concern about it. But it may not be a concern, but it was certainly different. It was certainly a different life than we had when we lived in Guyana. So I managed to articulate it. I'm so honoured that it was chosen as a winner, because you're never quite sure if something works or not. Because whilst writing that poem and talking about the differences we as a family went through, there are also many blessings. You know, we were not the kind of refugees who came with absolutely nothing, or had been, been put in exile or anything like that. So that was very different. But all our ways, and not having Caribbean community around, did inflict a different sense of belonging, and that belonging actually didn't come until I started going walking. This would be back in the 80s, and there's just something about walking on landscape that gives you a connection to the earth in a country that isn't your own. And when we moved to Wales, the landscape was there for us to enjoy, and I further engaged in working on my own garden, which was a very large garden. And becoming a gardener, I hadn't really thought of myself as a gardener before I came to Wales. I had an ordinary, domestic suburban garden, square, blah blah. But this was backed onto woods. The slugs were as big as my hand, and it was very challenging as well. But there was just something holistic about the whole thing, about being physical with the earth. And there was it was down a lane that used to be a mill workers cottages, and there was a stream, so you had all the beautiful kind of surroundings that bring the past and the present together. And work in the garden, and just something as simple as digging as Seamus Heaney with his poem, that really connected me a lot to others who'd gone before, because you never know what you're going to dig up. You know, one of my favourite poets from the Caribbean, Olive Senior, she says, gardening in the Caribbean, this isn't exactly quotation, but what you discover, you dig up is bones, lots of bones. And bones are history, all those people who went before us, you know, so all of those features came in, and I certainly think that the landscape has been really evocative in my sense of self and discovery and connection and in my work. When Cookie sings. When Cookie sings, the world stands still. The sunray pauses on the sill. The dog stretched out along the step uncurls a sleepy eye. The radio dulls its news report. Somewhere a bay of pigs a vote. My mother at the cooler stirs the coffee slow. The scrape of spoon on tin becoming liquid, losing its velocity in steam, a turbulence of spin. When Cookie sings, any children whimpering will stop mid-howl. Their ears bewitched, her singing halt the flow of tears. Pretty little butterfly, she sings, and we forget her gums, her watery eyes, her temper weighted with the privilege of years. Pretty little butterfly, what you do all day, flying in the garden, nothing do but play. Nothing do but play, my darling, nothing do but play. Fly, butterfly, take yourself away. When I am grown, migrated, gone to tune-filled lands and populous, discordant rhythms, my mind overpopulated with the science of climate change and red admirals, there she comes, an old black woman singing in a rocking chair, pretty little butterfly. I never knew her name.
Can you remember the first time you felt like writing?
The first time I felt like writing, well, I've been writing since I was quite young, probably 10 or 11, and this would be in Guyana, and I think I was trying to write songs because I was just getting into that kind of early teenage years when you're listening to music, and in those days you didn't have social media or any kind of easy way of recording things, so I used to listen to the same record over and over and write all the lines down, and so I just started writing, trying to, I'd hum the songs, make up the tune and fit the word, and that's how it started. And later on I realised, okay, I'm not a musician, I can't write music, but the words that were left on the page became a poem. And as I grew older and went to high school and started actually learning poetry at school, that was kind of part and parcel of the whole thing. I'd like to start by reading this poem called Alphabet Shanty. It's about learning to read. And in Guyana, when I was between 3 and 4, I went to a nursery school just up the road. So this memory comes from that. Alphabet Shanty. To that first miss who brought me letters, etched on slate, the singing gate, white chalk on black, my skin, her skin, the A becoming apples, the sun outside a singing so, the women off to market, oh, 4 years old, my fingers are bananas, snap the stick of chalk, My tears are all a-running so, a-running so. I want to run the open door. The A for apple on the line, A again and A again. Half a teacup, half a moon, a quarter of a petal. The boy next door a-crying so, a-crying so. But teacher's voice a-whispering, rub out, child, and try again. Have a go, another go, another go. Then through the window comes the breeze. I bite my lip to concentrate. The squeak of chalk on powdered slate, her hand on mine, the rise, the fall, the slant, the curl, the loop, the crawl. And then I am a-sailing so, the chalk become my tiller on slate of ocean, sailing so, her breath the breeze, my arm the sail, and over the waves we go, over the waves we go.
Your Guyanese origin has left delicious marks on your writings. You are a Guyana Prize for Literature winner, twice winner in fact. Equally, I feel as if you are shaped by everywhere else you have lived. Places such as Kent, Wales of course, we've just talked about. You write about landscapes so beautifully. So I'm really interested to hear about how the lived experience of cultures and landscapes have enriched your poetry.
Well, I kind of touched on some of that in the last question. I think migrants will always have their home countries in their minds. And my early poems were based on memory. Perhaps migrants in their, if you're starting to write, you're probably a bit more concerned about where you live. I've worked with refugees in the past, and I knew and done creative writing classes, and they were really most of them morely concerned about where they're going to live, where they're going to put their heads down, what's going to happen to their life, than actually reflecting apart from the loss. But that comes a bit later, and the landscape will always come in. I always find myself comparing. I was invited to India a couple of years ago, and as soon as I touched down and we went there for about 2-3 weeks, and I thought, oh my God, this looks so much like Guyana, because Guyana's got a huge Indian population, and the geography of the place and the heat and all those comparisons. So you're always kind of comparing. But because I've always lived in an urban setting, I don't think even now that I've had enough of a closer engagement with the country. But that really ties you in very, very much to a sense of belonging in a country. This is a title poem of this collection called On Watching a Lemon Sail the Sea, which I was so lucky to have won a prize in the Welsh International Poetry Competition. Its simple beginnings was just that, finding a lemon on Aberport Beach and picking it up, looking at it and wondering where the heck it came from. And so I went home and wrote a poem about it. On watching a lemon sail the sea. And I'm singing, you are my sunshine, thinking of my childhood across the sea of incubation. Go, honey, go, you self-contained cargo ship, you, with your seal, citrus juices and pitted panacea of seeds, braving the collision of tankers and illicit submarines. They called me scurvy. The lemonade my mother made was iced and sprinkled with demerara, of course. And I'm wondering, did they grow you there, oh lemon, mine you for your juices? A lemon plantation, not to be confused with a plantation, even a banana. Just don't mention sugar. Stack you in the gloom like Hirto mentioned bananas, green and curtailed in their growing, Or even those force-ripe mangoes with girls' names nobody knows here, and who leave their sweetness behind, bare-assed on the beaches, come to the marketplace comatose. I do not remember lemons, but limes. Limes piled high in their abundance. Limes, acid green pyramids on market pavements, holding their secrets beneath their reptilian skins. And there is my aunt, her arms thin as bamboo, gathering the fallen from the yard, sweeping their dried leaves into the remembrance of herself, whilst the black maid slips slivers of lemon into a split-bellied fish whose eyes glaze up at the sun. Gogon, you can come in now. Remember Martinique? Hugh the native in all her harnessed beauty, the slack-jawed fish, browning blood, the textured landscape in shades of purple and indigo. But liming is what my lemon is doing now. Hey-ho! Over the waves at Aberport, there he blows.
Many writers tend to find it difficult to sort of combine poetry and prose. How do you find it to be so easy? And if you have any advice for aspiring writers who want to specialise in both?
Well, I don't exactly find it easy. Some come easily to you and some don't. Endings I'm notorious at. They are never quite exactly what I'd like them to be. Apart from one story, the one that won the Commonwealth Prize for the Caribbean. I love that ending because it was just a brilliant answer, but I did think about it. Sometimes you have to let things lie, you know. Sometimes you just have to just put it in a drawer, forget about it if it's not the right time. Because for poems, I actually don't even know what I'm writing about until I start. So there's no point in me giving it a title and then starting to write. That's just nonsense. You know, I'd rather just feel something, you know, and it usually comes with a feeling or a phrase. With my first book, I actually dreamt my dad, who died when I was 15, we were sitting by the side of the river and we saw people walking on the water, and I said to him in this dream, "Who are those people?" And he turned around to me and said, "They are the Limbo Walkers." So the Limbo Walkers became the title of my first book. So a lot of it for me is the kind of listening and feeling and accepting these gifts that you get when you're open. I think firstly you need to be open and read, because that's just mega important. Sometimes I don't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a poem or I'm going to write a story. It'll start with whatever words or feelings or thoughts that I have, and as it goes on, then it's going to tell me if it wants to be a poem or a story, because it should become, I mean, like I know if I'm going to write a spoken word piece, because that'll come out in a different way. It'll suggest ways of being developed. So basically, as far as the genres goes, yeah, I mean, with short stories, obviously you have to, they're usually kind of a bit longer, and it's prose, so you can let go of the poetic condensation, if that's the right word. But I have seen people write short stories of 100 words, and they're excellent. So even the length of it doesn't really matter. I think it's just kind of being aware of what language does. You know, if a poem comes to you and it comes in a certain character, maybe it's a forceful character, maybe there's another voice that wants to come through, then maybe it might be best in a story. The Commonwealth winning story of mine, I actually wrote that 3 times because I wasn't sure what voice to kind of do it in. My voice, third person, what. So all these things you just have to explore. So really any advice I think I'd give to any writer is to just read widely, experiment, and listen to the beauty of language. You know, what pleases your ear, what makes you feel something really touches you, you know, and then you'll develop your own kind of sense of what you find beautiful. You know, I mean, this might be slightly off what we're talking, but I remember being very, very impressed actually, totally loved when I first heard Leonard Cohen, because his words and his lyrics are just so beautiful, and they're always very haunting. And I encountered him at a time in my life when I needed to see that you could do that with poetry.
I know you really enjoy running creative writing workshops. I was wondering how the process of facilitating these impacts your own writing process.
I'm not the kind of writer who likes to tuck myself away in an attic and write. I really like to collaborate with people, and over the years I've run many workshops. You know, poems on place, poems on belonging, and you as a workshop leader, you learn as much as you share with other people, because expressing and sharing ideas, I think, is vital. You know, and I'm always very interested to see how confident people get after a while of sharing ideas. And when I lived in Kent for the first time, I used to do a lot of walking tour, well, not walking tours, but writing outside, you know, on the beach or in a windmill or by a stream, and that always really worked really well.
Who are the poets and writers to have influenced you? And also, are there any new names of emerging writers, maybe, or new writers who you find exciting that we should be looking out for and reading?
I'm not really up with the new ones, to be honest, because I've been spending the last year reading mostly novels, actually, and not so much poetry, and doing a lot of gardening. But some of the people who've influenced me, Derek Walcott, the Caribbean, Kamau Brathwaite. When I went to university, I was 39, and it was a real big step for me. You know, I was a mom, I had 3 daughters, and going back into education is very, very, very tough when you're that bit older. But it was a very illuminating time for me, because I met all these, you know, get to learn and study all these writers. And I love the way that Derek Walcott's lyricism and the way that he paints an image. You know, it's very, very stirring, and I was so lucky to have met him and worked with some St. Lucian elders at the South Bank on his poetry and writing poetry. That was wonderful. And Kamau Brathwaite, I love the way that he really gave black voices their place, you know, because before he'd written his poetry, I don't think there was anybody who'd written like him. And I was really, really struck by the power of his poetry, and it made me think of my own family, and how in a mixed race family, you know, we hadn't seen any beauty in black members of the family because we hadn't been taught that, you know. So it was you can learn so much from these writers. Lawrence Scott is another writer I really admire. He wrote a novel which I think has been reissued recently, called Witch Broom, and it's a fantastic novel of time and shape-shifting, and it just takes you into that really space where the imagination can take you. Olive Senior I admire very much. She's a Jamaican woman poet, and I just love her work. I think I might have all of her books. And she kind of writes all these things that I think, oh, I wish I'd written that, you know, and such a lovely, lovely woman as well, very approachable. One English writer I really like is Angela Redmond. I don't know if you read any of her work. You know, she's, if you like Angela Carter, I'm not comparing her to Angela Carter, but if you know, and I came across a book by Nikita Gill just randomly the other day, and that really struck me. Yeah, so there's quite a few who have really impressed on me, and I think going to uni actually helped me with that, because I don't know how else I would have encountered these writers if I hadn't done that. So that's something I'm really grateful for. Let's read the next poem. Is called Let's Walk to the Witch's Cauldron. And the Witch's Cauldron is an inlet, a place of natural beauty in West Wales, only accessible by a perilous coast path or by kayak. Let's walk to the Witch's Cauldron. 2 steps on a path and I'm losing the will. Let's walk to the Witch's Cauldron. Forgetting this morning, my brave words falling. Let's walk to the Witch's Cauldron. Safe in bed with brass backbone, let's walk to the Witch's Cauldron. The fear of vertigo rising, the hungry sea waiting for my crushed bones on the rocks. Let's walk to the Witch's Cauldron. Beauty rears like beasts, these staggered rocks, the wind's cracked laughter, the abyss, the sky a chapel of pterodactyls, and small me, little me, in wooden shoes with leaden heels, heart louder than the core of seagulls wheeling, dipping, sneering like those girls so long ago, more beautiful, more clever, their sporty limbs like shotguns, mine like hockey sticks, whilst I held the banner, past the cup. But, turn back now, I will never face a cliff again, never follow the longing, never erase the beauty of the skinny girl at the back of a field, one foot in front of the other, one hand on every blade of grass, both eyes on the track. Don't look down. Breathe. See the flat, gravelled path, the froth of September gorse, the dog nosing. Listen to the sing of the wind, a kestrel dipping, the sudden opening of your chest like bellows pumping your unpredictable heart. The sea, that wavering noonday catch my eye, see, just carrying on his business, his normal everyday business, tied by the moon and the tides. I am the last thing on his mind. And suddenly, I am as light as that curlew there riding on the wind, lift each leg up and around, earth, stone, step, and there, falling away like a heartbeat, into the song sway of a gull's wing, 100 soars below, the Witch's Cauldron, twinkling in a setting of diamonds and light, sapphire blue, cerulean blue, embraced by causeway and stepping stones and miniature kayaks with miniature men dropped like a gift from the heavens. And from the earth a song comes, from the cliff a chorus, from the sea the dolphins, from the path a causeway thinning into infinity singing, I've put a spell on you, I've put a spell on you.
Are you working on anything in particular? And also tied to that question, if, let's just say that the opportunities were there, is there something that you'd love to do in Wales?
Well, I've been talking to some friends of mine actually in Kent about doing some gardening themed performances and at gardens. I mean, like Sissinghurst, which I've worked there before as a poet, and it would be a really lovely opportunity if I could kind of extend that to Wales. I remember launching my memoir, Kiss Kitty Girl, at the National Botanic Garden of Wales. And I actually applied to the National Garden of Wales to see if I could do a residency, but Mab Jones, bless her, beat me to it. Yes, and I actually just remembered that, you know. So I think I'd really love to do something in gardens, you know, because there's some beautiful gardens around Wales. And when I have worked in workshops, we've had some beautiful poems. I remember doing one in a cardigan once, where we were writing actually from the seeds of what do they call, hollyhock seeds that I had from the National Garden of Wales, and I gave them all these tiny seeds, and we started our writing like that, you know, and it was a really, really lovely day. Yeah, so it'd be great to do something like that again. I had some good news quite recently about a new collection that may be out in maybe a year or two. Won't say any more about that, but I am working on trying to write poems to my artwork at the moment, because before I started writing seriously, I was a visual artist, and I've got a body of maybe about 20 pieces of pen and ink drawings, and I'd really like to have those published with accompanying poems. So that'll be my next thing.